Winter nights in Willow Creek always felt cold. But that night was something else. The kind of cold that didn't just sting your skin, it crawled right under it. Like the air itself was warning, hey, something's wrong here. And, well, something was wrong. At the far end of Maple Street, in this old wooden house that creaked whenever the wind blew, 8-year-old Lily Morgan curled up under her bed. Not just hiding. No. She was folded into herself so tight, she looked like she was trying to disappear. Her tiny hands covered her ears, her breath shaking in these little bursts she kept trying to swallow down. Above her, the whole house was losing its mind. A lamp shattered. A chair slammed into a wall. A bottle rolled across the floor and clinked against something metal. And then came the voice. Tommy Granger. A storm wearing human skin. You think you can just... His words broke off into this ugly roar, like he couldn't even pick which threat to scream first. Lily squeezed her eyes shut. Hard. Hard enough for tears to leak out anyway. She bit down on her lip to keep from making a sound. Bit so hard she tasted blood. But she still didn't cry out. She didn't dare. You make one noise in that house. Just one. And Tommy found you like some kind of monster with radar. And honestly, yeah, maybe monster wasn't a strong enough word. The floorboards trembled as he stomped across the hallway. Something heavy, maybe a dresser, crashed onto its side, rattling the whole frame of the house. Dust sifted down between the wooden slats above Lily's head, settling in her hair. She didn't brush it away. She didn't move at all. Come out! Tommy's voice cracked through the air like a whip. Lily! I said get your little... The sentence never finished. He threw something again. Maybe the coffee table this time. Everything inside that house sounded like violence. And the messed up part. Lily didn't flinch anymore. Fear had soaked so deep into her bones. It didn't even have room to grow anymore. She pressed her forehead against the cold floor. Her breaths were hot against the wood, loud in her own ears. Too loud. She tried to quiet them, cupping her hands around her mouth like she was trying to smother the sound before it escaped. Just don't breathe. Don't breathe too loud. Don't make him look here. Just be small. Be nothing. Something dragged across the hallway. Slow, scraping. Maybe a bat. Maybe a chair. Maybe him dragging his boots because he was too drunk to walk straight. It didn't matter. All that mattered was he was close. The bed frame above her vibrated when his footsteps stopped in the doorway. Lily froze completely. Even her heartbeat felt like it was begging her to stay still. Where are you hiding? His voice dropped, low, almost playful. And that was always worse. When he got quiet, when he started sounding like he was smiling, because that meant he thought he was winning. Lily's chest tightened so badly she almost choked. She shoved her fist into her mouth, turning her whimper into nothing but a muffled, broken sound. Tommy stepped into the room. One slow step, another. Floorboards groaned beneath his weight. He kicked something, a stuffed rabbit, and it hit the wall with a soft thud. "Oh, sweetheart," he crooned, syrupy and wrong. "You making this harder than it needs to be." Her lungs burned. She needed to breathe, but she couldn't. She couldn't. "Please go away. Please go away. Please, please, please." He stopped right beside the bed, right above her. The house fell silent. Completely. Not a creak. Not a breath. Even the wind outside held its own damn breath. Lily pictured his boots, big, heavy, stained, inches from her face. She pictured his hands grabbing the bed frame and flipping it like nothing. She pictured him dragging her out by her hair. And then a thought crawled into her head. Cold, certain. "I'm not getting out of here. Not tonight. Not ever." Her heart felt like it was cracking apart inside her chest. Blood smeared across her knuckles. Tommy leaned down. She could hear him bending. The mattress springs shifted above her as his shadow spilled across the floor. Wide. Darker. "Found you," he whispered. Lily's entire body seized, a tiny, silent jolt of absolute terror. And then a noise exploded downstairs. Not a crash, not a bottle, not Tommy. This was different. Loud, forceful. The front door slamming open like someone kicked it clean off the hinges. Voices barked commands. Boots thundered through the hallway. Radios crackled. "K9 unit! Move! Move! Move!" Tommy snapped upright. "What the?" Heavy footsteps charged toward the room. Someone burst in with this deep, rumbling growl that didn't sound like any human she'd ever heard. Tommy cursed, stumbling back. "Get that damn dog away from—" But his words were swallowed by chaos. Sharp shouts, heavy boots, a struggle, a thud. And then silence. A different silence. Not the silence of fear. The silence that comes right after the nightmare cracks open. A soft sound, almost a sniff, came from beside the bed. Lily opened her eyes. Two warm, amber eyes stared back at her from the shadows. Not a monster. A dog. A giant German shepherd. Breathing slow, steady, like he was trying not to scare her. Lily stared, and for the first time that night, something inside her whispered, Maybe I'm not dying tonight." Because the moment Lily opened her eyes fully, really fully, everything around her shifted. The chaos didn't disappear. No, it was still there, shouting, boots pounding, the sharp bark of orders bouncing down the hallway. But there was something else now. Something solid. Something alive. Something that wasn't fear. The dog. Thor. Of course she didn't know his name yet. To her, he was just this huge shape of heat and muscle and warm breath in the coldest moment of her life. But later she would think, yeah, that was the exact second everything changed. Thor pushed his head a little closer, just enough that she could feel the air from his nose brushing her cheek. And you know, it sounds stupid, but it really was like the whole room warmed up an inch or two. like the cold that had sunk into her skin finally backed off a bit. Up above them, the bed frame rattled again. Not because Tommy was near. He was gone, dragged out somewhere down the hall. But the heavy boots of officers moved all around the house. "Room clear! Suspect in custody! Watch your corners! This place is a damn mess!" Even through the noise, Lily could hear the difference. These voices weren't angry. They weren't drunk. They weren't hunting her. They were working, searching, protecting. And yeah, she didn't understand any of that fully. She was 8. Her brain was scrambled from fear so bad it felt like she'd forgotten how to breathe. But her body understood something her mind didn't. She wasn't alone anymore. Thor pressed his front paws lower, lowering his whole body so he could get as close to the floor as possible, like he was trying to meet her where she was. "Easy, boy," someone said behind him. A calm, steady voice. The kind adults use when they actually care. "Let her see you. Don't crowd her." Thor didn't look away from Lily, not even for half a second. And his eyes, those warm brown eyes that were fierce moments earlier, softened in a way that shouldn't even be possible on a dog that size. Lily blinked. Her lips trembled. Her fingers twitched once, then went still again. "Hey," the voice came closer. "Hey, kiddo. We're the good guys, all right? You're safe now." Safe. That word felt foreign, heavy, like it wasn't allowed to exist in her world. Thor gently nudged the dust ruffle with his nose, pushing it aside inch by inch, like he was politely asking, "Can I come closer?" Lily's breath hitched. For a second she thought she was going to scream, not from fear, but because the pressure in her chest had nowhere else to go. But all that came out was a tiny gasp. Thor eased forward another few inches, belly sliding across the wooden floor, tail flat and still. No barking, no teeth, no sudden moves, just slow, patient understanding. "It's okay." That's what his eyes were saying, not in words, but in something deeper, instinctive. "I see her," the officer whispered. The man she would later know as Sergeant Mason Reed. "She's under the bed, bud. Good find." Lily didn't look at the man. She couldn't. People hurt her. People yelled. People broke things. But the dog was different. Thor stretched his neck forward and very gently touched his nose to the back of her hand. Not a lick, not something dramatic, just a soft little bump. Barely there. But it shattered something inside her. Not in a painful way, like a locked door cracking open. Her fingers curled, brushing his muzzle. A tiny stroke, clumsy and trembling, but real. Thor let out this quiet huff, almost like a sigh of relief. "That's it," Mason breathed. "Good girl. He's here for you." A loud thud echoed from the hallway, another officer bumping a broken lamp, and Lily jerked, body tensing like a trapped animal. But Thor reacted instantly, not backing away, but lowering his head until it nearly rested on her forearm. Like he was saying, "Stay here. Stay with me. I've got you. His weight didn't crush her. It grounded her. Mason crouched down, not reaching for her, keeping his hands visible, low and steady. You want to come out, sweetheart? No pressure, no force, just an invitation. Lily didn't answer. Her voice was gone, buried somewhere she couldn't reach. But she scooted forward an inch. Just one. Thor shifted back the same amount, giving her space without breaking contact. Step by step, breath by breath, slow as molasses. When her head finally cleared the underside of the bed frame, the world felt too big, too bright. Dust sparkled in the air from flashlight beams. The room was a tornado of broken furniture and shattered glass, but all she could look at was Thor. The dog sat up properly now, chest broad, ears perked, a massive, powerful creature built for danger. But the second his eyes met hers again, he softened, melted even. Lily crawled out the rest of the way and reached for him immediately, fingers burying into his thick fur like she needed him to hold her to the world. Thor didn't move, didn't flinch. He just let her cling. Mason exhaled, a long, shaky breath like he'd been holding it for hours. "Good boy, Thor," he murmured. "Real good." Lily didn't know it then. But this moment, her hand in his fur, his warmth against her skin, was the beginning of everything. The beginning of the bond, the healing, the truth, the war that would come later. But for now, it was simple. A terrified girl, a battle-scarred dog, and the first tiny spark of hope lighting up the darkest night of her life. If the moment with Thor felt like somebody finally turned a light on in the darkness, well, everything after that was like stepping into a room where the light switch worked only sometimes. You know? Like 1 second it flickers on, Roy Tat Ngay. That kind of hope. Fragile. Slippery. Because after the cops took statements, wrapped her in a blanket, and tried their best to be gentle, Lily was driven to the outskirts of Willow Creek. Snow blanketed everything. Thick, quiet, smothering. The kind of snow that makes the world sound like it's holding its breath. They pulled up to this little blue house with white trim. Cute, cozy, almost too warm-looking for a kid who hadn't felt safe in a long time. This was the home of Grace and Norman Foster. No relation to the word foster, just a weird coincidence that made social workers chuckle. Lily didn't chuckle. She didn't make any sound. Grace opened the door first. Gray hair in a messy bun, hands soft, voice softer. "Oh, sweetheart. Come on in, it's warm. I made cocoa." Lily didn't move. She stood there like she'd turned to ice the second she stepped out of the cruiser. The officer crouched beside her. "They're good people. They're gonna take care of you." But Lily barely heard him. The world had become muffled, like she had cotton stuffed in her ears. Grace reached out a hand, slow, gentle. Lily flinched so hard it made the woman stop mid-step. A hurt look flashed across Grace's face, but she covered it quickly. "No touching," she whispered. "Not yet." So they didn't. They let Lily walk in on her own terms. The house smelled like cinnamon and laundry detergent. Two things that should have felt comforting. But Lily didn't react. Her eyes skimmed across everything. The framed pictures, the soft rug, the fireplace crackling like it was trying to greet her. Nothing reached her. Norman stepped in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Well, hey there," he murmured. "We're real happy to have you here, kiddo." Lily's shoulders rose, an instinct, a shield. She stood perfectly still, hands balled at her sides. "Let her settle," Grace whispered. She's been through hell." And that was that. They didn't push, didn't question, didn't force her to talk. They showed her the bedroom she'd sleep in. Soft blankets, a stuffed bunny on the pillow, a nightlight shaped like a moon. She sat on the edge of the bed, stiff as stone, hands on her knees, eyes somewhere far, far away. "If you need anything, just call." Grace said it like she wasn't sure Lily remembered how to call at all. Lily didn't nod, didn't blink, didn't make a sound. When the door closed, silence fell like a heavy blanket, and that's how it went. For days. She moved through the house like a ghost. Quiet steps, blank eyes, arms hugged tight to her chest, like she was holding herself together physically. She didn't speak, didn't laugh, didn't cry in front of anyone. But at night, that was different. Willow Creek winters are brutal. Snow tapping windows, wind like distant screaming. And somewhere in the early hours, Grace and Norman started hearing it. A tiny, broken sound coming from Lily's room. Not a sob, not a scream, just a small, choking whimper, like someone crying underwater. Grace would stand outside her door, hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes because she didn't dare go in. Norman would gently pull her away. "She needs time. She's stuck in her own head right now." But it didn't feel like time was healing anything. Some nights Lily woke up, heart pounding, shirt soaked with sweat. Time 800 so. She'd press both hands over her ears, shutting out sounds that weren't there anymore. A crash, a shout, a boot step. Ghosts of memories rattling in her skull. Once she pressed her back to the wall and whispered, "No, no, 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 no," until her voice cracked into silence. And yeah, it hurt Grace and Norman to see that. It hurt the social workers. It hurt Mason, who stopped by sometimes, but could only stay a few minutes. He'd talk to her from the doorway. "Hey, kiddo, Thor asked about you today." "I mean, not literally. Dogs don't talk. But you know what I mean." Lily would stare. Not cold, not angry, just empty. Like whatever made her had been torn out and left somewhere back in that house on Maple Street. and nobody could reach her. Not Grace's gentle voice, not Norman's patient jokes, not warm dinners, not the fireplace, not sunlight through windows, not soft blankets tucked around her at night. Silence had wrapped around Lily like armor. And sometimes, silence is the scariest thing in the world. Because a scream, at least a scream, means there's still something fighting inside. But silence? Silence means the fight is gone, or hiding so deep, you don't know if you'll ever find it again. And the question that haunted everyone, Mason, the Fosters, even the cops at the station, was simple and terrifying. If a child falls that deep into fear, how do you bring her back? It was a Thursday afternoon in Willow Creek. Gray sky, thin snow drifting across the yard like someone shredded paper and tossed it into the wind. Grace was in the kitchen making soup. Norman was fixing a squeaky cabinet door. And Lily, well, Lily was sitting on the edge of her bed the same way she always did. Still, quiet, pulled inward, like she wanted to disappear into her own shadow. Then came the knock, not on her door. No, this knock was downstairs. A soft, steady rhythm, familiar. But Lily didn't really process it. She'd stopped reacting to most things. But then, that sound. The jingling. The quiet, unmistakable clink of a metal dog tag. Lily's head lifted. Just a little, barely an inch, but enough for Grace passing by to notice. Her eyes softened. Mason stepped inside the house first, brushing snow off his jacket. Behind him, filling the doorway like living sunlight, was Thor. He trotted in with that confident but gentle gait K9 dogs somehow master. Like, yeah, I can take down a grown man, but I won't knock over your lamp. Grace whispered, "He's here, sweetheart," as she tapped lightly on Lily's door. Lily didn't answer, didn't move. But her eyes were locked on the crack at the bottom of the doorway, watching the familiar shadow approach. Mason crouched down so he wouldn't tower over her when the door opened. "Hey, kiddo," he said softly. Can we come in? Thor's been, kinda missing you." He pushed the door an inch open. No reaction. No protest either. Grace gave Mason a tiny nod. "Go on." So he did. Thor walked in first. And Lily, she didn't gasp, didn't smile, didn't talk. But something in her shifted, like the world flickered, just once. From grayscale to a softer shade of color, Thor sat down in front of her. Not touching, not crowding, just being there. His chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths. His ears perked slightly, just enough to show he was paying attention. Lily stared at him, hands clenched into fists, throat tight, shoulders locked. Mason stayed by the door, letting the room breathe. "Take your time," he whispered. Thor lowered his head a little, eyes warm, patient. That dog had a way of looking at people that made you feel like he could see right through your fear. And then Lily's fingers twitched. Tiny, barely noticeable. But Thor noticed. Of course he did. He slowly, so slowly, it almost looked like he was asking permission with every inch, leaned forward. Lily swallowed hard. Her breath quivered. Her hand hovered in the air like she wasn't sure she was allowed to reach out. Then, almost like her body made the decision before her brain did, she touched him. Just 2 fingers, right on his collar. It was clumsy, shaky, barely any pressure. But in that moment, it was everything. Grace covered her mouth to keep from crying. Norman, who had snuck in behind Mason, blinked way too fast to be casual, and Mason whispered, "Atta girl. That's it." Lily pulled her hand back instantly, startled by her own courage. But Thor didn't move, didn't react. He just breathed. And somehow, that sound, his breathing, filled the room more than any words could have. Maybe because it was steady, reliable, alive. Things Lily hadn't felt in a long, long time. Thor shifted just enough to lie down, resting his chin on his paws, his body forming a barrier in front of her. Protective, but gentle. Lily watched his chest rise and fall. One breath, then another, then another. She leaned forward an inch, a tiny inch. But she did. Thor didn't pounce on the moment, didn't nudge her, didn't ask for more. He just let her exist. And for the first time in days, Lily's shoulders dropped a little, like she'd been holding them up so long they forgot how to relax. Mason stepped back silently, leaning on the door frame. Grace put a hand on his arm. "She's letting him in," Grace whispered. "Yeah," Mason whispered back, voice thick. "He's good at that." The next day, Thor came again, and the next, and the next, and each time, something new happened. The second visit, Lily touched his fur with her whole hand. The third, she sat beside him. The fourth, she leaned against him, barely. But it was the closest she'd been to another living thing in months. Thor didn't fix her. He didn't try to. He just stayed. And it was that staying, quiet, patient, loyal, that started stitching pieces of her back together. Grace said it best one evening when Mason came to pick Thor up. "It's like Thor doesn't knock on the door to her heart. He just sits outside until she opens it herself." And wow, wasn't that the truth? Because Lily didn't trust people. Not yet. Not after everything. But Thor? Thor was different. He didn't shout. He didn't grab. He didn't judge. He didn't demand. He just breathed beside her. Warm, solid, present. And little by little, Lily's world started to shift from gray to something almost warm. The connection between them didn't grow fast. It grew quietly, like a seed pushing through frozen ground. A miracle, if you asked anyone watching. It started small, really small, like tiny moments that almost slipped by unnoticed. Lily sat cross-legged on the living room floor one afternoon, while Thor was sprawled beside her, head resting on one giant paw. Grace handed her a box of crayons, just trying something soft, something harmless. Lily didn't even look at Grace, but she looked at the crayons, and that was already a big thing. She picked out a dull blue one, hesitant, slow, like she was afraid even choosing a color might be wrong. Thor lifted his head for a second, watching her, then gently put his chin back down. His tail thumped once, quiet but encouraging. And for the first time in weeks, Lily drew something. Not a house, not a person, not a flower. A shape, round on top, blocky at the bottom. Two pointed ears. It took Norman a full minute to realize what it was. "Grace," he whispered. "I think she's drawing Thor." Grace nearly dropped the spoon she was holding. Lily didn't notice. She stayed focused, coloring awkwardly, the crayon slipping in and out of her grip. But she kept going, and her breathing slowed, steadied, like she'd found a pocket of peace inside that little world she was sketching. And then, another small thing. She smiled, a tiny one, barely there. Quick as a blink, but it happened. Grace froze like she'd seen a ghost. Norman whispered, Did she?" Even Thor perked up a little, tail swishing like, "Yeah, I saw it too, humans." And after that, it was like the universe decided to give Lily a few quiet miracles. One morning, Thor came over with Mason as usual. But instead of sitting on her bed like she had the first few days, Lily stood up on her own, awkward, stiff, like her legs weren't used to making choices for themselves. She walked to the back door. "Time 800 spum." Norman raised an eyebrow. "You want to go outside, kiddo?" Lily didn't answer. She still wasn't talking, but she tugged the handle. Grace rushed to grab Lily's coat. "Hold on, sweetheart, it's freezing." But Lily had already slipped out onto the snowy porch. Thor followed, stepping carefully beside her like he was escorting the president. And then, oh man. What happened next made everyone's breath catch. Lily ran. Not far, not fast, but she ran. Her boots kicked up little bursts of snow as she shuffled across the yard, and Thor trotted behind her with this goofy look, tongue out, ears bouncing. Grace pressed a hand to her chest. Mason looked like he didn't know whether to smile or cry. Norman wiped his eyes with his sleeve like it was just the cold. And Lily, she let out this soft sound, half laugh, half breath, as she turned around and saw Thor waiting for her. A laugh, a laugh. It wasn't loud, wasn't clear, wasn't even confident. But it was real, like watching a flower open in the dead of winter. Days passed, and little moments kept blooming. She'd sit next to Thor and bury her fingers in his fur. She'd follow him from room to room like a tiny shadow. She even reached up once, just once, and touched Mason's sleeve before pulling back. But the real moment that changed everything, came on a quiet evening. Snow tapped against the windows. Grace was knitting in the armchair. Mason sat on the floor beside Thor, talking to him about some K-9 training nonsense. Norman pretended to read the newspaper, but was mostly watching Lily. And Lily? She sat in front of Thor, legs tucked under her, fingers twisting the edge of her sweater. Her eyes were soft, calm, in a way nobody had seen before. Thor looked right at her, steady, gentle. She leaned in, placed her hand on his chest, time 900 mems, and whispered, so faint they thought they imagined it. Thor. Silence punched the room in the gut. Grace's knitting needles fell to the floor. Norman's newspaper slipped from his hands. Mason's breath caught. Hard. He whispered, what did you say, sweetheart? Lily didn't look at him. She only stroked Thor's fur again and repeated, barely audible, Thor. Mason choked, literally choked, on a breath he'd been holding for weeks. His eyes filled fast. He wiped at them awkwardly like, dust or something. Grace pressed both hands to her mouth. Norman exhaled so shakily he had to steady himself on the table. But nobody was looking at them. They were looking at the girl whose silence had lasted so long, it felt like her voice was a myth. And she had spoken. Not a sentence. Not a cry. Not a plea. Just a name. But not any name. His name. The name of the one creature she trusted. The name of the dog who dragged her back from the edge of the world. Thor. And in that one word, broken, quiet, trembling, Lily Morgan came back to life. It was late afternoon. Snow was melting on the porch, dripping down the steps in little cold rivers. Grace was making hot chocolate. Norman was fiddling with the thermostat, mumbling about the damn thing never reading the real temperature. And in the living room, Lily was sitting on the rug with Thor's big head resting on her lap, her fingers buried in his fur, feeling safe in a way only Thor could make her feel. Mason stood by the window, coat half on, half off, like he couldn't decide whether he was coming or going. His jaw was tight. His eyes, usually warm when he talked to Lily, were shadowed with something heavier. Grace noticed. Everything okay? She whispered. Mason didn't answer right away. He just stared out at the snow, swallowing hard. Then he turned. And that's when the room shifted. Because Mason Reed was not the kind of man who hesitated. He jumped into burning buildings, chased armed suspects, sent Thor into danger without blinking. But now, he looked scared. He crouched down in front of Lily, voice low, unsteady. Hey, kiddo, can you look at me? Lily didn't move her hand from Thor's fur, but she lifted her eyes. Mason took a breath. One of those breaths people take when they're about to break someone's heart. Lily, sweetheart, you're gonna have to, go to court. The words hung in the air like smoke. Lily's face went blank. Not confused, not sad, just blank. Like her mind shut off everything except survival mode. Mason saw it. Grace saw it. Even Thor sensed it. Ears flicking up, body tensing under her touch. Mason tried again, softer. I know it sounds scary, and I swear we'll all be right there with you. But the judge needs time 900s. He didn't finish, because Lily's body suddenly caved in like someone had kicked her knees out from under her. She slid off the rug and hit the wooden floor with a soft thud. Not crying yet, not breathing right, just collapsing. Lily! Grace gasped, dropping the mug she was holding. It shattered, cocoa spilling everywhere like melted chocolate snow. Thor was already there, pressing his body against Lily's side, whining low and urgent. Then it happened. The trembling. Not the small kind she had when she was nervous. This was violent, full body, like the fear was too big to be contained inside her skin. Her fingers clawed at Thor's fur. Her breath came in sharp, broken gasps. And then she cried. Not a tear, not a whimper. A full-on, heart-wrenching, chest-collapsing sob that sounded like it had been trapped in her ribs since the night Tommy Granger destroyed her world. Grace dropped to her knees beside her, hands hovering, not touching, because touching her when she was like this could send her spiraling harder. Sweetheart, it's okay. Shh, you're safe, Grace whispered, voice cracking. But Lily wasn't hearing any of it. She was somewhere else. Some nightmarish loop of that night. The shouting, the crashing, the choking terror. The moment she thought she'd die. Her cries twisted into broken little sounds. No. No. Please. Don't. Mason felt his throat close. Damn it. I shouldn't have said it like that. I messed up, Grace. I messed up bad. Mason, Norman murmured, gripping his shoulder. You didn't cause this. He did. But Mason didn't look convinced. Thor gently nudged Lily's cheek with his nose, releasing a deep, steady huff. His chest pressed against her like he could physically hold her together. Slowly, she clung to him, arms wrapped around his neck, face buried in his fur like it was the only air she could breathe. Her sobs shook them both. Thor didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't shift. He just stayed. Solid. Warm. Unshakable. Mason knelt beside them, voice barely a whisper. I'm so sorry, kiddo. I'm so sorry. Grace wiped her eyes. She just found her voice, Mason. Just found a little light. And now... She couldn't finish, because the truth sat heavy in the room. Lily wasn't ready for court. Not mentally, not emotionally, not even physically. But the system didn't care about readiness. It cared about evidence, statements, testimonies, checkboxes. And Lily. Lily was just a child who had barely learned how to breathe again. Mason forced himself to speak the words, even though they tasted like ash. If she doesn't testify, he might walk. Norman cursed under his breath. Grace covered her face. Thor snarled, not loud, but a low, rumbling growl that said he understood exactly who he was. And Lily, she just clung to Thor harder, sobbing harder, shaking so violently it terrified everyone. Because right then, right there, the little girl who had just begun to heal was being dragged back into her nightmare. And all Mason could think was, how the hell do we ask a child to face the monster who almost ended her? It was raining in Colorado. Not the soft, movie-style rain. This was the heavy, mean kind. Like the clouds were angry and wanted the whole world to know. The Foster house creaked a little in storms. Old wood, old pipes. Norman always said, "This place talks more than I do when the weather hits." Normally Lily didn't care, but tonight she couldn't sleep. Her chest still hurt from crying earlier. Her head pounded from fear. And every time she closed her eyes, Tommy Granger's shadow crawled back into her dreams. So she got out of bed quietly, bare feet padding against the cold floor, and made her way toward the stairs. She didn't even know why. Maybe she wanted water. Maybe she wanted to find Thor, who usually slept downstairs on nights she couldn't breathe. But as she reached the middle step, she heard it. A voice. Not Norman's. Not Mason's. Not anyone safe. No. This voice was darker, sharper, the kind of voice that could freeze bone. Tommy Granger. Lily stopped breathing. The blood drained from her face. Her stomach rolled. Her knees trembled so hard she grabbed the railing. But she wasn't imagining it. His voice drifted up the staircase, muffled but unmistakable, through the crack under the office door where Norman handled late-night paperwork. "They've got nothing on me," Tommy said, laughing softly. This horrible, smug sound that made Lily's skin crawl. Lily's heart hammered in her throat. Her ears rang. Her body screamed, "Run!" But her feet wouldn't move. She crouched low on the stairs, pressing her back against the wall. Rain hammered the roof. Wind rattled the windows. And Tommy kept talking, smooth, arrogant, like he owned the world. "Kid won't talk," he muttered. "I scared her good. She's not going to say a damn thing in court." Every word cut into Lily like glass. Her hands shook violently. Her breath came in short, broken bursts. But she listened. "Even if she does, there's nothing left," Tommy continued. "I cleaned everything. No prints, no blood, no proof." Lily's vision blurred with fear. But behind that fear, something else flickered. Anger. Tiny, but hot. A spark she didn't know she still had. Her hand drifted to the pocket of her sweatshirt. Inside it? The small voice recorder Mason had given her once. just in case she ever needed to remember something important. She stared at it. Her heart pounded so loud she thought the whole house could hear it. She was terrified. Every cell in her body screamed to run, hide, pretend she never heard anything. But then she remembered Mason's words. You don't ever have to be brave alone. Thor's with you. And God. She needed that dog right now. She pressed the button. A tiny red light blinked. Click. Recording. Lily slid the recorder across the floor until it was almost under the office door. She held her breath, praying the rain would cover the sound. Tommy kept talking, bragging, confessing without realizing it. They can't touch me. Not without proof. And that kid's too scared to... The recorder caught every word. Lily crawled forward, grabbed it, held it tight against her chest. Then, a floorboard creaked. Footsteps, slow, heavy, coming toward the office door. No, 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 no. Panic shot through her. She scrambled backward, but her hand slipped, and the recorder fell. It slid across the step and bumped into the corner. Lily froze. The office door clicked. Thor appeared out of nowhere. Time 500. He walked right to her, stood in front of her like a wall, and then he barked. Not loud, not aggressive, just enough to distract. Norman's voice called out from the kitchen. Thor? Buddy? What's wrong? Tommy's muffled voice faded, his call ending. He didn't hear her, didn't see her. Lily sagged against the wall, shaking so hard the staircase trembled with her. Thor nudged her cheek with his nose. She buried her face in his fur, gasping quietly, tears sliding down her skin. Thor, she whispered. I'm scared. He let out a low, rumbling huff, steady, protective, the kind of sound that said, I've got you. When her breathing slowed, Lily picked up the recorder, clutching it like treasure. She looked around. Where could she hide something this important? Her eyes landed on Thor's old K9 boot. Worn, scuffed, forgotten. Perfect. She unzipped it, slid the recorder deep inside. Thor placed one paw on the boot, guarding it, claiming it, protecting it. Lily exhaled shakily. Something inside her, something broken for too long, felt a little stronger, a little braver. Because tonight, in the middle of fear and rain and trembling hands, she'd done something no one expected. She'd found the truth and hidden it in the one place she trusted most, Thor's boot. Now, let me ask you a question. If you were Lily, how would you be straightforward? No 5 optional. What about you? Because this was the day she had to face the courthouse. The Willow Creek County Courthouse looked colder than the snow outside. Gray stone, tall columns, windows dark like eyes that had seen too many ugly stories. And inside, it was even worse. People were everywhere. Reporters with cameras, locals whispering, officers trying to keep order, bailiffs barking directions. The whole place buzzed with that sharp, electric tension that makes your skin feel too tight. And then, here came Lily, small, quiet, wrapped in a coat too big for hers, holding onto Thor's leash like it was the only rope keeping her from falling, and on her right leg, the K9 boot, oversized, black, awkward, swallowing half her calf. People stared. Some whispered. One reporter murmured, "Why is she wearing a dog boot?" Lily didn't look at any of them. She kept her eyes on the floor, shoulders shaking with every step. Thor walked beside her with that slow, careful pace he used when he sensed fear. Her fear, his fear, everyone's fear, but then, right before the courtroom doors, a bailiff stepped in front of them. "Dog has to stay in the corner during testimony." Mason stiffened. "She needs him close, Rules are rules, Sergeant." Lily's fingers tightened around Thor's collar. Her breathing hitched. Thor pressed his head into her chest. A low, grounding rumble only she ever heard. But the bailiff pointed. "The dog goes there." A tiny fenced-off area, far from the stand, far from Lily. Lily's whole body trembled. Mason crouched beside her, voice gentle. Hey, kiddo, look at me." She couldn't. Her eyes were locked on the empty space where Thor was being taken. "It's okay," Mason whispered. "Thor's still here. He's not leaving." But that wasn't the truth Lily felt. Because to a child whose whole world rested on one creature, distance is disappearance. The courtroom doors swung open, and everything inside hit her at once. Crowded benches, a jury box full of strangers, Judge Daniels towering above, cameras clicking like tiny gunshots. The defendant, Tommy Granger, sitting there in a suit that didn't hide the monster underneath. And worst of all, Blake Saunders, the defense attorney. Tall, sharp suit, sharper tongue, and a smile so fake you could hear the plastic. The moment he saw Lily limp forward with that big black boot, his eyebrows lifted. "Oh," he murmured loudly. "Well, this is dramatic." The jury stirred. Lily froze. Mason's fists clenched until his knuckles went pale. Judge Daniels shot Saunders a look, but the damage was already done. Lily's breathing turned ragged. Her knees went weak. Her fingers twitched. She glanced over her shoulder, hoping, praying to see Thor behind her. But no. He was in the corner, behind the wooden rail, ears forward, body leaning toward her. He wanted to go to her. He couldn't. Lily swallowed a sob. A bailiff guided her to the witness stand. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She pulled her sleeves over her fingers like she wished she could disappear inside them. Everyone stared. Whispering rose like static. "Poor kid. She doesn't look well. What's with the dog boot? Is she playing for sympathy?" Blake Saunders stood, adjusted his tie, smoothed his notes, walked toward her with the slow confidence of a man who thought he'd already won. "Miss Morgan," he began, "do you know why you're here today?" Lily opened her mouth, but no sound came, just air, shaky, empty. Saunders smiled, that cruel, smug smile. "Let me help you," he said. "You're accusing my client of very serious crimes, and I want the jury to understand the truth." He paused, then pointed, not at her face, not at her shaking hands, but at the boot. "That is quite an accessory." The courtroom murmured. Cameras clicked. Saunders tilted his head, voice dripping mock concern. "Tell me, sweetheart, why are you wearing a dog's boot? Is this supposed to make you look fragile?" Mason surged forward. "Hey, back off! Sergeant Reed," Judge Daniels barked. "Sit down." Mason froze. Lily's panic spiked so fast she couldn't breathe. Her chest tightened, her vision blurred. The courtroom spun. Tommy leaned back, smirking. And Thor, from across the room, let out a low, guttural growl, not loud enough to remove him, but loud enough for Lily to hear. It steadied her for half a second. But then Saunders stepped closer. Too close. "Well?" he said softly, cruelly. "Tell us the story behind the boot." Lily's hands fisted. Her lips trembled. Her shoulders shook violently. But no words came. And in that agonizing silence, it felt like the entire world turned its back on her. Lily sat there on the witness stand, small, trembling, shrinking into herself, while Blake Saunders hovered over her like some kind of vulture in an overpriced suit. Words like fragile, dramatic, seeking sympathy floated around her, dripping from his mouth like poison. The jury shifted. Reporters scribbled. The judge frowned, but didn't stop him. Not yet. And Thor watched from the corner, his body stiff, ears forward, tail frozen. The leash clipped to the wooden post strained against his strength. He didn't blink. Not once. He was reading Lily the way only a K9 could. Her breathing, her pulse, the twitch in her fingers, every silent scream beneath her skin. Saunders leaned closer. "So," he said, voice oily, "you can't answer, or you just won't." Lily gasped for air, short, fast, panicked, like the room was shrinking, like the air had thickened. "Come now," Saunders pressed. "You can speak, can't you?" Her hands clawed into the wood of the chair. Thor growled, low, deep, dangerous. The bailiff shot him a look. "Quiet, dog." But Thor wasn't listening. He was locked on Lily. Saunders smirked. "Oh, still nothing? Maybe the dog can testify for you?" That did it. Thor stood. The entire room shifted, like it felt the energy change. "Sit!" the bailiff barked. Thor didn't sit. He took one step forward. "Hey!" the bailiff shouted. Thor took another. "Someone stop that dog!" But no one moved, because Thor wasn't running. He was choosing her. Right when Saunders opened his mouth to unleash another sarcastic jab. "Time 600s." The leather leash snapped like a rubber band. Gasps exploded. "What the? Grab him! Somebody stop the K9!" But Thor was already halfway across the room. He didn't bark, didn't bite, didn't attack. He climbed. With fierce, desperate determination, Thor leapt onto the witness stand and planted himself in front of Lily. Chest puffed, eyes blazing. People screamed, reporters ducked. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order! Order now!" But Thor wasn't done. His paws scraped at Lily's leg. No, at the boot. Scratch, scratch, scratch. "Thor?" Lily whispered, voice cracking. And then, clunk. The boot shifted. Thor hooked a paw under the strap. Scratch, dig, tug. "Get that dog off the—" Saunders shrieked, stumbling back. "He's out of control!" Mason surged to his feet. "Your Honor, let him work!" "Sergeant Reed, you are out of—" Thud. The boot fell. It hit the floor with a heavy smack, and something tiny, silver, rolled out. Click, 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 until it stopped in the center of the courtroom. A recorder. The recorder Tommy never knew existed. The room froze. No air, no breath, nothing. Then, a soft beep. Activated. Alive. The judge blinked. "What is that?" Mason's voice shook. "Your Honor, that's evidence." Saunders turned white. "No, this is planted. This is—" But Mason was already moving. He scooped up the recorder like it was a newborn child and placed it on the judge's bench. "Play it," Mason whispered. "Please, play it." "Objection!" Saunders screamed. "Overruled," Judge Daniels thundered. "Play the recording." The bailiff connected it. Static crackled. The room held its breath. Then, Tommy Granger's voice filled the courtroom. "She won't talk." Gasps erupted. "No one's gonna believe a kid. Not this one." Jurors exchanged horrified looks. "I cleaned everything. Every damn thing." "There's no evidence left." Lily flinched. Thor pressed into her side. "She's scared. Exactly how she should be." Someone whispered, "My God, I already won. They've got nothing." Click. The recording ended, and for 1 second, the courtroom was dead still. Then, boom. Emotion detonated. Reporters stood. Jurors covered their mouths. People cried out. Judge Daniels slammed the gavel, but even he looked shaken. Saunders dropped his papers. Tommy's face twisted. Panic, anger, something feral. Mason turned to Lily, eyes full of pride, disbelief, relief. Thor stood tall beside her, chest heaving, tail rigid, eyes locked on the monster he'd just exposed. And Lily, for the first time in the entire trial, lifted her head, her eyes clear, steady, alive. The room had turned on Tommy, and it all began because one little girl trusted one loyal dog with the truth. Lily sat there on the witness stand, small, trembling, shrinking into herself, while Blake Saunders hovered over her like some kind of vulture in an overpriced suit. Words like fragile, dramatic, seeking sympathy floated around her, dripping from his mouth like poison. The jury shifted. Reporters scribbled. The judge frowned, but didn't stop him. Not yet. And Thor watched from the corner, his body stiff, ears forward, tail frozen. The leash clipped to the wooden post strained against his strength. He didn't blink, not once. He was reading Lily the way only a K9 could. Her breathing, her pulse, the twitch in her fingers, every silent scream beneath her skin. Saunders leaned closer. "So," he said, voice oily, "you can't answer, or you just won't." Lily gasped for air, short, fast, panicked, like the room was shrinking, like the air had thickened. "Come now," Saunders pressed. "You can speak, can't you?" Her hands clawed into the wood of the chair. Thor growled, low, deep, dangerous. The bailiff shot him a look. "Quiet, dog." But Thor wasn't listening. He was locked on Lily. Saunders smirked. "Oh? Still nothing? Maybe the dog can testify for you?" That did it. Thor stood. The entire room shifted, like it felt the energy change. "Sit!" the bailiff barked. Thor didn't sit. He took one step forward. "Hey!" the bailiff shouted. Thor took another. "Someone stop that dog!" But no one moved, because Thor wasn't running. He was choosing her. Right when Saunders opened his mouth to unleash another sarcastic jab, times 600 mems. The leather leash snapped like a rubber band. Gasps exploded. "What the? Grab him! Somebody stop the K9!" But Thor was already halfway across the room. He didn't bark, didn't bite, didn't attack. He climbed. With fierce, desperate determination, Thor leapt onto the witness stand and planted himself in front of Lily. Chest puffed, eyes blazing. People screamed. Reporters ducked. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order! Order now!" But Thor wasn't done. His paws scraped at Lily's leg. No, at the boot. Scratch, scratch, scratch. "Thor?" Lily whispered, voice cracking. And then, clunk. The boot shifted. Thor hooked a paw under the strap. Scratch, dig, tug. "Get that dog off the—" Saunders shrieked, stumbling back. "He's out of control!" Mason surged to his feet. "Your Honor, let him work!" "Sergeant Reed, you are out of—" Thud. The boot fell. It hit the floor with a heavy smack, and something tiny, silver, rolled out. Click, 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 until it stopped in the center of the courtroom. A recorder. The recorder Tommy never knew existed. The room froze. No air, no breath, nothing. Then, a soft beep. Activated. Alive. The judge blinked. "What is that?" Mason's voice shook. "Your Honor, that's evidence." Saunders turned white. "No, this is planted. This is—" But Mason was already moving. He scooped up the recorder like it was a newborn child and placed it on the judge's bench. "Play it," Mason whispered. "Please, play it." "Objection!" Saunders screamed. "Overruled!" Judge Daniels thundered. "Play the recording." The bailiff connected it. Static crackled. The room held its breath. Then Tommy Granger's voice filled the courtroom. "She won't talk." Gasps erupted. "No one's gonna believe a kid. Not this one." Jurors exchanged horrified looks. "I cleaned everything. Every damn thing. There's no evidence left." Lily flinched. Thor pressed into her side. "She's scared. Exactly how she should be." Someone whispered, "My God, I already won. They've got nothing." Click. The recording ended. And for 1 second, the courtroom was dead still. Then, boom! Emotion detonated. Reporters stood. Jurors covered their mouths. People cried out. Judge Daniels slammed the gavel, but even he looked shaken. Saunders dropped his papers. Tommy's face twisted. Panic. Anger. Something feral. Mason turned to Lily. Eyes full of pride, disbelief, relief. Thor stood tall beside her, chest heaving, tail rigid, eyes locked on the monster he'd just exposed. And Lily, for the first time in the entire trial, lifted her head, her eyes clear, steady, alive. The room had turned on Tommy. And it all began because one little girl trusted one loyal dog with the truth. Lily sat there on the witness stand, small, trembling, shrinking into herself, while Blake Saunders hovered over her like some kind of vulture in an overpriced suit. Words like fragile, dramatic, seeking sympathy floated around her, dripping from his mouth like poison. The jury shifted. Reporters scribbled. The judge frowned, but didn't stop him. Not yet. And Thor watched from the corner, his body stiff, ears forward, tail frozen. The leash clipped to the wooden post strained against his strength. He didn't blink, not once. He was reading Lily the way only a K-9 could. Her breathing, her pulse, the twitch in her fingers, every silent scream beneath her skin. Saunders leaned closer. "So," he said, voice oily, "you can't answer. Or you just won't." Lily gasped for air, short, fast, panicked, like the room was shrinking, like the air had thickened. "Come now," Saunders pressed. "You can speak, can't you?" Her hands clawed into the wood of the chair. Thor growled, low, deep, dangerous. The bailiff shot him a look. "Quiet, dog." But Thor wasn't listening. He was locked on Lily. Saunders smirked. "Oh, still nothing. Maybe the dog can testify for you." That did it. Thor stood. The entire room shifted, like it felt the energy change. "Sit!" the bailiff barked. Thor didn't sit. He took one step forward. "Hey!" the bailiff shouted. Thor took another. "Someone stop that dog!" But no one moved, because Thor wasn't running. He was choosing her, right when Saunders opened his mouth to unleash another sarcastic jab. Time 600. The leather leash snapped like a rubber band. Gasps exploded. "What the? Grab him! Somebody stop the K9!" But Thor was already halfway across the room. He didn't bark, didn't bite, didn't attack. He climbed. With fierce, desperate determination, Thor leapt onto the witness stand and planted himself in front of Lily. Chest puffed, eyes blazing. People screamed, reporters ducked. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order! Order now!" But Thor wasn't done. His paws scraped at Lily's leg. No, at the boot. Scratch, scratch, scratch. "Thor?" Lily whispered, voice cracking. And then, clunk. The boot shifted. Thor hooked a paw under the strap. Scratch, dig, tug. "Get that dog off the—" Saunders shrieked, stumbling back. "He's out of control!" Mason surged to his feet. "Your Honor, let him work!" "Sergeant Reed, you are out of—" Thud. The boot fell. It hit the floor with a heavy smack, and something tiny, silver rolled out. Click, 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 until it stopped in the center of the courtroom. A recorder. The recorder Tommy never knew existed. The room froze. No air, no breath, nothing. Then, a soft beep. Activated. Alive. The judge blinked. "What is that?" Mason's voice shook. "Your Honor, that's evidence." Saunders turned white. "No, this is planted. This is—" But Mason was already moving. He scooped up the recorder like it was a newborn child and placed it on the judge's bench. "Play it," Mason whispered. "Please, play it." "Objection!" Saunders screamed. "Overruled," Judge Daniels thundered. "Play the recording." The bailiff connected it. Static crackled. The room held its breath. Then, Tommy Granger's voice filled the courtroom. "She won't talk." Gasps erupted. "No one's gonna believe a kid. Not this one." Jurors exchanged horrified looks. "I cleaned everything. Every damn thing. There's no evidence left." Lily flinched. Thor pressed into her side. "She's scared. Exactly how she should be." Someone whispered, "My God. I already won. They've got nothing." Click. The recording ended, and for 1 second, the courtroom was dead still. Then, boom! Emotion detonated. Reporters stood. Jurors covered their mouths. People cried out. Judge Daniels slammed the gavel, but even he looked shaken. Saunders dropped his papers. Tommy's face twisted. Panic, anger, something feral. Mason turned to Lily, eyes full of pride, disbelief, relief. Thor stood tall beside her, chest heaving, tail rigid, eyes locked on the monster he'd just exposed. And Lily, for the first time in the entire trial, lifted her head, her eyes clear, steady, alive. The room had turned on Tommy, and it all began because one little girl trusted one loyal dog with the truth. Lily sat there on the witness stand, small, trembling, shrinking into herself, while Blake Saunders hovered over her like some kind of vulture in an overpriced suit. Words like fragile, dramatic, seeking sympathy floated around her, dripping from his mouth like poison. The jury shifted. Reporters scribbled. The judge frowned, but didn't stop him. Not yet. And Thor watched from the corner, his body stiff, ears forward, tail frozen. The leash clipped to the wooden post strained against his strength. He didn't blink. Not once. He was reading Lily the way only a K9 could. Her breathing, her pulse, the twitch in her fingers, every silent scream beneath her skin. Saunders leaned closer. "So," he said, voice oily, "you can't answer, or you just won't." Lily gasped for air, short, fast, panicked, like the room was shrinking, like the air had thickened. "Come now," Saunders pressed. "You can speak, can't you?" Her hands clawed into the wood of the chair. Thor growled, low, deep, dangerous. The bailiff shot him a look. "Quiet, dog." But Thor wasn't listening. He was locked on Lily. Saunders smirked. "Oh? Still nothing? Maybe the dog can testify for you." That did it. Thor stood. The entire room shifted, like it felt the energy change. "Sit!" the bailiff barked. Thor didn't sit. He took one step forward. "Hey!" the bailiff shouted. Thor took another. "Someone stop that dog!" But no one moved, because Thor wasn't running. He was choosing her. Right when Saunders opened his mouth to unleash another sarcastic jab. "Times 600 pems. Right!" The leather leash snapped like a rubber band. Gasps exploded. "What the? Grab him! Somebody stop the K9!" But Thor was already halfway across the room. He didn't bark, didn't bite, didn't attack. He climbed. With fierce, desperate determination, Thor leapt onto the witness stand and planted himself in front of Lily. Chest puffed, eyes blazing. People screamed, reporters ducked. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order! Order now!" But Thor wasn't done. His paws scraped at Lily's leg. No, at the boot. Scratch, scratch, scratch. "Thor," Lily whispered, voice cracking. And then, clunk. The boot shifted. Thor hooked a paw under the strap. Scratch, dig, tug. Get that dog off the... Saunders shrieked, stumbling back. He's out of control! Mason surged to his feet. Your Honor, let him work! Sergeant Reed, you are out of... Thud. The boot fell. It hit the floor with a heavy smack, and something tiny, silver, rolled out. Click, 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 until it stopped in the center of the courtroom. A recorder. The recorder Tommy never knew existed. The room froze. No air, no breath, nothing. Then, a soft beep. Activated. Alive. The judge blinked. What is that? Mason's voice shook. Your Honor, that's evidence. Saunders turned white. No, this is planted. This is... But Mason was already moving. He scooped up the recorder like it was a newborn child and placed it on the judge's bench. Play it, Mason whispered. Please, play it. Objection! Saunders screamed. Overruled, Judge Daniels thundered. Play the recording. The bailiff connected it. Static crackled. The room held its breath. Then, Tommy Granger's voice filled the courtroom. She won't talk. Gasps erupted. No one's gonna believe a kid. Not this one. Jurors exchanged horrified looks. I cleaned everything, every damn thing. There's no evidence left. Lily flinched. Thor pressed into her side. She's scared. Exactly how she should be. Someone whispered, My God, I already won. They've got nothing. Click. The recording ended, and for 1 second, the courtroom was dead still. Then, boom! Emotion detonated. Reporters stood. Jurors covered their mouths. People cried out. Judge Daniels slammed the gavel, but even he looked shaken. Saunders dropped his papers. Tommy's face twisted. Panic. Anger. Something feral. Mason turned to Lily. Eyes full of pride, disbelief, relief. Thor stood tall beside her, chest heaving, tail rigid, eyes locked on the monster he'd just exposed. And Lily, for the first time in the entire trial, lifted her head. Her eyes clear, steady, alive. The room had turned on Tommy, and it all began because one little girl trusted one loyal dog with the truth.